this edition of our Q&A. I'm going to begin this edition with an apology. In a recent broadcast, a recent Q&A, in passing, I spoke of prophecy. I mentioned prophecy. I described a couple of prophecies, the Hopi prophecy on Prophecy Rock, and the biblical prophecies in what is now known as the Torah codes or the Bible codes. And I made mention of those with the assumption that you, my community, had seen some of the previous content that I'd done, either through Gaia. We did an extensive discussion of the Bible codes through the Missing Links series, portions of which were seen on this channel, or in other conversations. Your letters, your emails let me know that my assumption was incorrect, and that's why I'm apologizing. And that's what I want to talk to you about a little bit today. Actually, this is really good news, because what it tells me is that we have new viewers. We have viewers that have not been with me since the Missing Links series was aired through Gaia TV and on this channel, and new viewers that may not have seen some of the other episodes. I'm going to invite you to go back and check them out. They're still available here on this channel. But I want to take this opportunity, if you don't have the opportunity, if you don't have the opportunity to go back and look at those, I'm going to do my very best. I'm going to summarize for you with a little presentation precisely what the Bible code is, what it's all about, what the science says about it, and what it says about where we are right now, about the events that are happening in our lives and in our world right now. Let me just talk a little bit briefly before I begin the presentations. Prophecy in general. Scientists believe that there's a close association between what we in the past have called prophecy and what scientists today call remote viewing. Now, those of you familiar with remote viewing know what I'm talking about. If you're not familiar with remote viewing, it is the ability of an individual to sit in a moment in space and time, presumably any moment in any space and any time, and through a deep state of intuition that we all have available to us, they are able to access timelines of events that are occurring in real time or have yet to occur into our future. Now, the reason that this is possible, I'll talk about when we get into the presentation. Einstein told us that time exists. All events in time always exist. All right, so it's a really strange way of thinking about time, but it means that the past and the present and the future exist simultaneously. This is what Einstein said. And if that's true, and if we have the ability, the intuitive ability through states of consciousness to navigate the timelines, then we should be able to at least view and perhaps interact with the events of the past, the present, or of the future. So we know this is successful. We know this works because the U.S. military explored remote viewing beginning in 1980s. It was actually applied in the Gulf War in 1990 very successfully. For example, when remote viewing is used to locate missile silos, Scud missiles in the Iraqi desert, without risking the lives of troops to go in and find those missiles. So we know that the principle of remote viewing is valid, it works. The physics is still being explored, and scientists believe they understand enough to be able to apply it, and by applying it, they will develop a deeper understanding of the physics. Well, I believe that the parallels between the remote viewing as we know it today and the prophecy as we have known it in the past are close enough that we can use those principles to talk about the prophecy, biblical prophecy, for example, and what it means in terms of what's happening in our world today, specifically in Eastern Europe today. So the idea of remote viewing or prophecy, an individual is able to attune to a timeline of events that are unfolding. So they're in point A and they are looking into the future or into the past, but in this case we're talking about the future of point B. If nothing changes between point A And when the events of point B play out, then what they have seen may very probably come to pass. However, and this is where it gets it's a little real tricky, because of what are known as bifurcations in the time-space continuum. You and I are part of those bifurcations. What that means is that between point A and point B on a linear timeline, any choice that is made can deviate, can cause the events to deviate from that point B. One little choice can cause, so for example, a discussion, a negotiation at the peace table may not bring an end to the war, but it may be enough to deviate from the possibility of that war escalating. So the bifurcation allows for a shift. And now you're looking at the timeline, and the original prophecy that was recorded may not be valid. Nostradamus, looking from his day he went as the year 3000. So many things have happened between his day and the year 3000 that have caused so many bifurcations. Some of his visions, as accurate as they were in the 20th century, may not.
Have you ever been in a situation where a friend did a personal growth program and you tried the same?
Be accurate into the future, because we're causing those bifurcations. This is true of indigenous prophecy, the Hopi prophecy, talk about this. It's true of biblical prophecy. So I mentioned the biblical prophecy specifically because it has been studied scientifically. Statisticians, mathematicians have for a long time manually known that there are codes in the first 5 books of the Christian Bible, or the first 5 books that are the Hebrew Bible. It's called the Torah. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy are those first 5 books in the Old Testament, and they are the Torah in the Hebrew tradition. They share this information. There's something unique about those first 5 books that does not apply to the rest of the Christian Bible. It doesn't apply to any other known document of record. And I want to talk to you about what that is, what the statisticians have discovered, how it works to be able to query this information database, and what it may be saying about our world today. Now, before I even begin this, I'm going to say this now, and then I'll emphasize it in the presentation. Prophecy cannot tell us exactly what's going to happen. And when we're talking about remote viewing, we're talking about quantum possibilities. And in the quantum world, we can never know precisely when and where something will happen. Quantum possibilities are all about probabilities. So we can know with a certain degree of certainty when an event, a certain probability, when an event may occur. Maybe it's a 70% probability or a 90% probability. But because it is a quantum possibility, it's not locked into stone, because we have choice, and that's the whole point. We are never locked into any of the most frightening prophecies, no matter how frightening, no matter where they come from, no matter what you've seen. I'm going to show you in the biblical prophecy, specifically in the Bible code, where the code tells us that we always have the opportunity to change what the code is showing us. We always have a choice. We may not know that we have a choice. We may not feel that we have a choice. But when it comes into quantum possibilities, when it comes down to quantum possibilities, we always have the ability to make a choice, at least enough of a choice to create a bifurcation, to shift the timeline from the most frightening possibilities that we're told, and we're talking about biblical prophecy. You know, there are a lot of very frightening possibilities in the book of Revelation, for example, and in other books as well. So what I'd like to do, let's talk about the Bible code specifically, the Torah code, more commonly known as the Bible code. And from that, we begin to understand the science of how the queries are made and what those codes are actually saying to us. So when we talk about the Bible code, we are in fact talking about specifically the Torah code. the code or the codes that are embedded into those first 5 books of the Christian Old Testament and the Hebrew book, or the Hebrew text itself that is called the Torah. The Torah is one of the most mysterious texts, spiritual religious texts that we have available to us today. Still a lot of controversy even over where it came from and how it originated. Scholars have yet to agree 100% on where this text came from. There are some scholars, biblical scholars, that believe that Moses wrote the text as it was dictated to him. Others believe that Moses was handed the texts from the experience in the event that he had on Mount Sinai when he was engulfed in the cloud and the fire, and he heard the name of God and he heard the voice of God, that he was actually given the Torah. And yet other scholars believe the Torah was an accumulation of texts that were written by humans over a period of time. As mysterious as the origins are, what we know is that it is one of the most stable texts of the religious texts available. The Dead Sea Scrolls pushed the date of the Torah back over 1,000 years, beyond what the original dates had believed to have been. And we now know that 3,200 years BP, before present, is when the Torah emerged, however that happened. Now, what makes this so interesting is when we look at copies of the Torah, modern Torahs that we have today, and we look at these ancient copies, very, very few discrepancies exist in the text, very stable text. Approximately 23 letters have been changed over those 3,200 years, and that is almost unheard of when you think of all the translations that it's gone through, and different languages that it's gone through. But this is the whole point, and what the scholars, what the rabbis have always said about the Torah is that it is more than a book to be read. It actually is a map of time. And because they believed it was a map of time, they were very careful to duplicate every letter in a copy to be precisely what it was in the original. Before we had computers and printers, this was all done by hand. And if the rabbi, the scholar, would, be 90% into.
There was a moment there where I really thought I was going to pass out.
The replication of a Torah and make a mistake. What they said was that entire document had to be discarded, because if they changed one letter in the Torah, they would change one letter in the history or the future of the world. And I think you'll begin to understand why this is. There was a rabbi called the Genius of Vilna. It was Rabbi Elijah ben Solomon Salman. He was a Kabbalist, and he summed up what I'm saying to you beautifully. What he said, and these are his words, he said, the rule is that all that was, is, and will be until the end of time is included in the Torah, from the first word to the last word, and not merely in the general sense, but as to the details of every species and each one individually, and details of everything that happened to him from the day of his birth until the end. That's a direct quote. What he's saying is that the Torah is a map of all living beings, including you and me. And I'll describe how specific this is in just a moment. But this takes us beyond a religious document. So I'm going to invite you to consider this conversation of the Torah as a mysterious and sacred text that was left to the people of the earth to help us to understand who we are and the potentials that we have in our lives, in our future, and the role that we play in determining how those potentials play out. You can think of it that way. It takes on, for many people, it takes on a whole new meaning. So the Torah was originally received, and I always laugh when I think of this. If you're my age or maybe older, or maybe you've seen the reruns of the book, the movie, Exodus, where Charlton Heston played Moses. And indelibly engraved upon my mind is the image of Charlton Heston in his robes and his white hair and his white beard, and he's staggering down from the top of Mount Sinai, and in each arm he's carrying these huge stone tablets that were given to him, the Ten Commandments and the Torah on the top of Mount Sinai. That is the way we've been conditioned to think of the Torah. But modern scholars are offering us a little bit different idea. First of all, what mathematicians and what the scholars are saying is the Torah was originally received with no break in the sentences, with no punctuation. It was received in the Hebrew language, which is a language that does not use vowels. So it was a document of consonants, one continuous string of 304,805 characters. That number is important. So the original Torah was believed to have been received as one continuous string of information. 304,805 characters, not on a parchment, not in a book, not etched onto stone, big stone tablets that Charlton Heston is carrying down the side of Mount Sinai. Rather, it was etched into a mysterious stone that fit in the palm of the hand. Now, we don't have any good representations of this, but if you can think, it's a very different way of thinking. If you can think of this stone as fitting into the palm of a hand, and if a high intelligence truly was visiting Moses, who or whatever you believe that intelligence is, if you believe it was God, whatever you believe God to be, or if you believe it's a higher intelligence from another dimension or from another world, it would make sense that such a sacred and profound document, as you're going to see, would be left in something that would not be destroyed easily like a parchment would be. Now, in mid-1990s, 1994, a group of mathematicians under the guidance, the leadership of Elihu Rips was the mathematician's name, published a theory about the Torah. It was published in a peer-reviewed journal called Statistical Science. You can see volume 9. And here's a copy of the original paper, and it was under the title Equidistant Letter Sequences in the Book of Genesis. Now, that sounds pretty benign. You say, well, what's that have to do with prophecy? The way this works is that there is a mathematical algorithm that allows mathematicians and statisticians to search the Torah for meaningful information, for patterns and sequences of words that show up beyond what could be a chance, beyond what could be a fluke. And what they're saying in the abstract, it's saying it's been noted that when the book of Genesis is written as two-dimensional arrays, that equidistant letter sequences, and I'm going to share with you what that is, spelling words often appear in close proximity. It says the effect is significant at the level of 0.000000004. That means there's a very small probability that this is a fluke. One of the tests that was made was a test of the names of historical rabbis. It was believed that if the Torah contained all that was, is, and will ever be, that the names of these rabbis should show up in the text. So a group of code specialists from the United States were invited to participate in this. These were code specialists from the intelligence agencies, NSA, CIA. And there were a group of historic rabbis, and they went to search for their names to see if they were in fact in the Torah. Well, not only were the names in the Torah, it was mind-boggling what else was in there. The names, the dates of their birth, the dates of the cities that they lived in, where they practiced their tradition, the people that they practiced with. And what the experts said was our referees were baffled by this. The prior beliefs made them think that Genesis could not possibly contain meaningful references to modern day, or in this case, later day individuals. Yet when the authors carried out the additional analyses and the checks, the effect persisted. The paper is thus offered to statistical science readers as a challenging puzzle. They're saying, we don't know why this is happening, but here's what's happening. All right, so how is it possible? How is it possible that meaningful information could be of modern day events, what we would call prophecy, could be written into a book that was delivered to the people of the earth over 3,000 years ago in a fixed format? How could that information be in there 3,000 years ago? Who 3,000 years ago knew about the events of the modern world? Well, to answer that question, we've got to unlock these codes a little bit. So I'm going to move quickly because I want to honor your time, and I just want to give you a sense for how this works. The modern Hebrew alphabet that you see on your screen is inside of the red box. For every letter in the Hebrew alphabet, there is a mathematic code, a number associated with that letter. Now, I want you to know that this is true of every alphabet known to exist on the face of the earth today. Every ancient alphabet, whether it's cuneiform or Sumerian or Egyptian hieroglyphs or kanji, Japanese kanji, or Chinese letters, Greek, the Greek alphabet, the Phoenician alphabet, the English alphabet, every alphabet has always had a mysterious number associated with it. The number is constant, it never changes. The mystery is, where did the number come from? And I talk about this in other programs. I won't do it here. Where do those numbers come from? But the fact that each letter can be converted to a number makes the computer search much easier when it comes to searching the code, and that's the point. So for the Torah code, what happens is all of those 308,000 plus letters are converted into its number equivalent. All right, so you get this long sequence of continuous numbers, no punctuation, no breaks between the sentences or anything like that. All right, and then this information, a total of 304,805 numbers, is arranged into a matrix, again, with no punctuation, no spaces. But here's the key, and if you are a mathematician, you're going to understand exactly what I'm saying here. This is not a fixed matrix of X and Y coordinates. It is a dynamic matrix that changes with the queries. Now this gets really, really very sophisticated, very interesting. Okay, it is arranged initially into a matrix of 64 rows, 4,772 numbers each. 64 rows, 4,772 characters each. And then what happens is each time a query is made, the results of that query reposition the rest of the matrix to reflect the impact of that query. This is a dynamic matrix. This is so sophisticated. It only works with the Torah. The researchers tried popular books of war and peace, big books of war and peace, Moby Dick. They tried the phone books. Back in the old days, we used to have printed telephone books. And what I'm going to share with you only works with the first 5 books of the Christian Bible and the Hebrew Bible, the Torah. This dynamic, multi-dimensional matrix. So once this matrix, this dynamic matrix is in place, it's in the computer, then there are very complex algorithms that will search for patterns. And they will do so using what are called ELS sequences, equidistant letter search sequences, or ELS algorithms. These are very, very cool. Rabbis used to do this manually, and it's said that it made them crazy. There are rabbis that literally went crazy doing this with a quill pen and parchment, but they knew the codes were in there before computers were ever developed. So what is an ELS code? It's also called a skip code, and that's the way I'm going to refer to it. A skip code is a number that identifies how many letters you will pass over before you grab one of the letters in the matrix. So you begin with a letter, and then the skip code tells you how many letters you will go until you grab the next letter, and how many letters you'll go until you grab the next letter. So, for example, a skip code of 10, you would begin with the letter that you've chosen, and then you would go 10 letters and grab that letter, 10 more letters and grab that letter to determine the sequence. And those letters would, if it was the correct skip code, it would reveal a meaningful message coming from the biblical text. So let me give you an example, and this is an example that rabbis have known for a long time. They originally discovered this manually, and it's in the book of Genesis that the name of the Torah is actually encoded into the book of Genesis using a skip code of 50. So remember, Genesis is the first book of the Torah. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. So the way this works is the first T. So the top line that you're seeing on your screen is read from your right to your left. This is the way that Hebrew is read. There are no vowels. Specifically, there are vowels that are implied. All right? So there will be no O, because O is a vowel. So the first T that we see, from that T, if we use a skip code of 50 and you go to the left, there are no other T's, and then you go to the right and you begin on the second level, and on the 50th letter there is the O, and then you do the same thing again. You go 50 more and there's the R. You go 50 more and there's the H. Remember, there is no O because it is a vowel. So using a skip code of 50, the word Torah shows up in the book of Genesis, early in the book of Genesis. There are very complex algorithms that are used to do this, and computer programs, and right now, to the best of my knowledge, those programs are only working on PCs. They're not made for the Mac. There is a way that you can use software on the Mac to make the Mac look like a PC. And then you can run the code under that. It's a little complex to do that. But I want to give you an example. What you're seeing is a screenshot of some of those search algorithms on the actual Torah code. And what you're seeing, and the only reason we're not going to read this, we'll read some other ones, but what I want you to see, and what I want you to see here, is that the codes can be vertical. They can go top to bottom, bottom to top, the search. It can go left to right, right to left, and it can also go diagonally. And what happens is, when a meaningful letter sequence or a phrase or a word is found within a certain distance of another word, it is called statistically significant. If it's, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of letters, it probably doesn't mean much. But when these words are in close proximity, or when they actually cross one another, and you'll see this is where the messages begin to appear. Now, this whole concept was made popular, brought to the public attention in the mid-90s, specifically, and then with a book in 97 by a journalist named Michael Drosnin. Sadly, Michael Drosnin has passed, so he is no longer involved in this, but it is through his journalism that he published this first book called The Bible Code, and I believe four other books following, Bible Code 1, 2, 3, and 4, to bring us up to date on what was happening in the world. And the way that he did it was very profound, because in the Bible Code, there was a series of sequences saying that the Israeli prime minister at the time in the 90s would be assassinated. Now, some of you, I know, have not learned about this in school. Others of you weren't alive when this was happening. So I'll just go over this very briefly as an example. And then we'll use this example to go through other queries very, very quickly once you understand how this works. So the Israeli prime minister between 1983 and 1995, his name was Yitzhak Rabin. He was a man of peace, and if you know him, or if his name is familiar, you may remember that he worked with under the guidance of Bill Clinton. When Bill Clinton was our president, Bill Clinton was the one that got Yasser Arafat, the Palestinian, the leader of the Palestinians on the right-hand side, and Yitzhak Rabin, the Israeli prime minister on the left. He got them together for the peace accords. They were called I believe it's the Oslo Peace Accords, where the two men in principle agreed to create a peace. This is the closest we've ever come to peace.
Folks who've stopped driving at night because of vision problems, try this simple ice hack with water.
Between these two factions that are our brothers and sisters in blood, and they truly are. They have the same heritage. This is the closest we ever came. There were people that did not want that peace to happen, and one of those individuals was a man that assassinated Yitzhak Rabin, and he did it on November 5th, 1995. The reason I'm sharing this is because the Bible code said that when the query was made, Michael Drosnin was working with the mathematicians, and they saw the assassination November 5th, 1995. And they warned Yitzhak Rabin that this would happen. He listened to their warnings, and he believed in the Torah code, and he said, if it's in the code, then it's meant to be, and I'm not going to change my plans. I'm paraphrasing. He went forward with his day as he had planned his day, and the man that was identified in the Torah at the time of day, that was identified in the Torah on the street, that was identified in the Torah, in fact, took the life of Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin. That was what brought the Bible code into the headlines. The fact that it so accurately described this event. So what I'm sharing with you here, this is a highlight, and I'm going to go to a computer screen. What you're seeing here is a portion of the Torah matrix. All right, Yitzhak Rabin is in the red. I just want you to see how these codes are revealed. Is in the red, so you see him vertically, and crossing him. It's not even it's nearby. It's crossing him. Assassin who will assassinate actually crosses his name. Now, the bigger picture, there's a lot more information, and I want to share this with you. Here is the screenshot, and they're using geometric forms to highlight the different words. So in the circles, the name of Yitzhak Rabin is on a diagonal, and you see that. The name of the assassin who will assassinate crosses him. So it says an assassin will assassinate, and it crosses his name. The assassin's name is in the truncated pyramid in the upper left, the name, and his name, that says his name, and his name is on that same line to the right. His name is Amir. And in fact, Amir is the name of the assassin that took Yitzhak Rabin's life. So the question is, how could that information have been a 3,000-year-old text? Well, what the scientists did, they said, what if Yitzhak Rabin had postponed his tour that day? He was on he was doing essentially a parade. What if he'd postponed that parade? So they entered the query into the Bible code, and it still said, name of assassin who will assassinate. Name of the assassin was Amir Yitzhak Rabin, but then it says assassination delayed. So if Yitzhak Rabin had postponed, he would have lived that day, perhaps not on to another day, because it said assassination was delayed. So these are the kinds of things that are showing up. Then the scholars began to go back and look in history and see what else could possibly be in this Bible code, in this Torah code. And the answer is everything. Everything. Any event that you put in there is going to show up. These are major events. Here you see the atomic holocaust in Hiroshima. In the circles vertically, you see atomic holocaust. The triangles, you see Japan. The year is in the squares, crosses the atomic holocaust. It is the Hebrew year 5705, which translates into the Julian year, or the Christian year 1945. So 1945 actually crosses, and this is the only place this happens in the Bible code. There is nowhere, when all the queries are run, there is nowhere that says that this will happen as it did. During the Cold War years, there was a potential in the mid-1980s And all the queries have been run since that time. Nowhere does it say nuclear holocaust, atomic holocaust. So I'm saying this because many people are concerned that we're going to have an all-out global war with mushroom clouds on every horizon. And I'm not saying that we couldn't have a limited nuclear exchange. I hope not. I hope and I believe that cooler heads will prevail. But if that happened, that is not an all-out holocaust. That would be a limited. It's called the tactical nuclear exchange. It's a horrible term that has been coined in military circles. There are what are called tactical nuclear weapons designed to be used on the battlefield, much smaller in scale than what happened in Hiroshima. Very sad that anyone would even put the time and energy into developing a weapon like that called a tactical nuke. So that's my personal feeling. It's not my science. So this is how this works. And they began looking at other things. John F. Kennedy, assassination of President John Kennedy. Here his name is in circles vertically. To die is actually in the same circle. The city of Dallas, where he was assassinated, is in there. And it goes on in more detail in other codes. It tells the name of the assassin, the street, the time of day, how it happened. Here it is. Name of the assassin is Oswald. You're seeing in the diagram. I forgot that I put this in there. Oswald is in the circles. He was a marksman. You see that in the diamonds. Name of the assassin who will assassinate. Very similar to what you saw with Yitzhak Rabin. 9/11. Before it happened, and this is really amazing. Here you see the Twin Towers vertically in the center in the circles. It knocked down in a truncated, it's almost like a trapezoid that you see twice. It happened 2 times. Airplane is in there, and in a more detailed query, you actually see the name of Bin Laden is in the green on the right-hand side of the code there. Attack, thousands die. So you get the sense for how this works. Not only bad things, a lot of good things. The Torah codes described Obama's election. Here they say Barack Obama. They give his name. His name is spelled out in blue in Hebrew. He's president, and you see that in the Pentagons. Barack, his name is on there. Islamic affiliations, his name is in there. In the USA is all in there. Okay? So I'm going to make a point here because the Bible code doesn't predict, and I want to be really clear, and you'll hear me say this again. It doesn't predict. If you know what to ask, it will reveal the relationships, but it is not predicting what will happen. So when the queries were made in hindsight, it was easy to choose the words and the keywords. It's kind of like a search algorithm in Google. You know that you get pretty good at refining the kinds of keywords to help you better find what you're looking for in Google. In this software, the way that the queries are entered in hindsight can help us to know what the code knew about all of this. But the thing is, you have to ask the question. It's not predicting blanket. These things are going to happen. You've got to know what question to ask, number one. Number two, the query must be made in the Hebrew language because it is being queried against the Torah. Now, there are ways to translate English into Hebrew so that you can make the query into Hebrew. But the algorithm has to have a query in the Hebrew language. Now, the reason I'm going through all of this is the point I'm going to make right here. Because the Bible code always tells us that we always have a choice. Our fate is never sealed unless we choose to seal our fate. We are never destined to a dark outcome unless we choose that outcome, because any choice that we make prior to that outcome creates the bifurcation that takes us onto a different path, onto a different timeline, thus avoiding those outcomes. Here's a perfect example of what I'm going to say. In the year 2000, there was a threat of nuclear annihilation for Israel. It's being made by some of Israel's enemies. So the Hebrew year 5760, Julian year 2000, Holocaust of Israel, it says it was delayed. Look at this. In the year 1996,
forward. So, ancient Indian philosophy, they talk about the idea of Maya, that the word
same thing, it says, will you change it? Right there. And I highlighted this in red. And you will find this frequently in the Torah codes, in a place near the most frightening statements that are in there. Nuclear holocaust, atomic holocaust, for example, like you're seeing here. Will you change it? The code itself is telling us that we always have a choice. The key is we must act upon our choice. We must make the choice of peace. We must make the choice to avoid the darkest scenarios that are depicted in these codes. And that is true of any prophecy. The Hopi prophecy tells the same thing. The Incan prophecy tells us the same thing. Tibetan prophecies tell us the same thing. All they can tell us is what may happen if nothing changes. They're looking at probabilities in time and space as we embrace our power to choose, our power to influence these quantum realities. By doing that as individuals and by doing it collectively, we are shifting those timelines to avoid those darkest moments. And as I said, unless something has changed, all of the Torah codes that from the experts that I've seen, that I've worked with, and I've been a student of this, I've studied this since the 90s myself. We've done whole workshops on this. I do not see anything in there about a nuclear holocaust or atomic holocaust beyond the end of the Cold War. So of all the things you have to worry about, and there are a lot of things out there, maybe that one can have a little less priority for you. I want you to know that you're in the Torah code because everyone is. Every name of every person that's ever been entered is in the Torah code. The city that you're born, where you live your life, who your partners are in life, it's all in there. And you say, how can that be? How can that possibly be? And the answer to that, it's a deep mystery. It goes back to what Einstein said early on, is that the past, present, and future all exist simultaneously. So somehow, over 3,000 years ago, and this is the way as a scientist I choose to think of this, you've seen me talk in past programs about the very real possibility that we are living in a simulated reality or a virtual reality, that we are living a simulation, learning something about ourselves, learning about the power of love, learning about the power of human emotion, learning about the power of good and evil. And I say that because those are the dominant themes playing out in our world. The ancient theme of good and evil has been playing out since the beginning. The power of love to transcend hate and to transcend our hurt and heal, and the power of human emotion to elicit that love. Those are all factors that I personally believe are dominant factors. If we're learning anything in a simulated world, I believe this is what we're learning. Now, the Bible code itself says that the code cannot be understood until what is called the end of time. Not the end of the world, not the end of the world like so many people thought 2012 was. 2012 wasn't the end of the world. We're not living the end of the world now. We may be living the end of a certain kind of time and moving into a different kind of time, a new kind of time. What the Bible code says very clearly is that we will only be able to read the code at the end of time when computers, and the word computer is in the code, when computers can unlock the codes. This comes from the book of Daniel, actually, is where this is. So the information in the Bible code was shut up and the words were sealed until the end of time. And it's at the end of time, and look at in the circles, computer. The word computer actually crosses to shut up the words and seal the book until the end. You can't see it's cut off here, but the end of time. All right. So we now have the computers. We are living according to the Mayan traditions, the end of one cycle of time and the beginning of a new cycle. Time may mean something different to us. Our world is changing. Our world may mean something different. But it's only now that we have the wisdom to understand the algorithms, to create those algorithms, and we have the machines to run those algorithms against the code. The book of Daniel says it's only now that we can read this because it's been shut up and sealed for our protection up until this time. Now our computers, our high-speed computers, are allowing us to go through all of these possibilities. Here's the quote that I was sharing with you. Einstein said, "Time does not flow in only one direction, and the future exists simultaneously with the past." This has always been one of the mysteries in physics. It feels to us like we can only go from the present into the future. However, mathematically and in terms of quantum principles, there's nothing that prevents us from moving backward in time. It simply is that time appears to be flowing forward. And I mentioned in an earlier program that physicists believe that is linked to the Big Bang. The Big Bang is the expansion that began our universe that continues today. With that expansion moving outward, that's where time and space-time were created with that expansion. So if our experience of time and space is linked to the expansion of the universe, because the universe is still expanding outward, that would explain why time is dominant in that direction from the present into the future. If the universe were collapsing, which at some point in our distant future, theorists believe it will, that it will stop expanding and it will begin to collapse. In Hindu traditions, this is the breath of Brahma. Brahma is exhaling right now. That's the expansion, time, space, moving from present to future. When Brahma begins the inhale, then the universe begins to contract, time will go in reverse. That's got to be a pretty weird experience. I don't know. I don't want you to think about this in terms of something to be concerned about this week or next week. I see no evidence to support that. But I want you to know that Einstein says time does not flow in only one direction. If the future exists simultaneously with the past, then we can think of the Bible code and the Torah code as a map of quantum possibilities that were laid down over 3,000 years, 3,200 years ago. Possibilities only.
Veți câștiga 15.000 de euro în 3 luni dacă vă alăturați proiectului meu astăzi.
Helping us to understand the consequence of our choices. And each time we make a choice, each time I make a choice and you make a choice, we're changing that Torah code. And every time our nations make a choice, we're changing it. So that code in the quantum realm is in constant motion. It's constantly shifting and rearranging that code. And that's how it can accommodate every name and every possibility of every event that has ever happened, like the rabbi said early on. All that is, all that was, is, and will be is in this map of time. It's a mind blower. It is a mind blower, and this is why I wanted to talk to you about it today. So the Torah is a quantum map of all possibilities. Now, I want to be really clear on this. Scientists believe that we have an incomplete understanding of the Torah code. The reason they believe that is because the information appears fragmented. All right, and you saw that. You've got a piece here that crosses a piece here. They're not contiguous sentences. So we are still unraveling the mystery of the Torah code. So what I want to say, and I want you to hear this very, very clearly, that what the Bible code, the Torah code is saying, it does not predict a precise outcome. It can tell you of outcomes that have occurred. It doesn't predict. It can give you only potential outcomes, only possibilities. The key is you've got to know what question to ask for the query to reveal the interconnected relationships. You have to know what those connections are. And the queries have to be, as I mentioned, in the Hebrew language. So I personally am in awe of the code itself. I'm in awe of the mathematicians and the statisticians that have designed the algorithms that are able to even begin to make sense of this code. I'm in awe that we have in our possession on this planet a mysterious artifact that was revealed to us over 3,000 years ago that may hold the map of all possibilities on the quantum level if we are in fact living in a quantum simulation. It makes sense. If this is a virtual reality, if this is a simulation, and as I mentioned in the other programs, the recent algorithms tell us that the odds are better that we are in a simulation than we're not. The odds over 90% that you and I physically exist in another realm. And the reason we are essentially empty space, we are made of atoms. 50 trillion cells in the human body. Approximately 100 trillion atoms in each of those cells, and every one of those atoms is over 99.999999999% empty space. The energy gives us the illusion of being solid, but really there's not much of us here. And when you put all of that together, if we are in fact living in a simulation, it makes perfect sense that who or whatever is responsible for our simulation would have left us a code or a key or a map to inform us of the possibilities and our relationships to those possibilities and consequences of our choices. That's what I personally believe that is being revealed in the Bible code, in the Torah code. So, what does that say to us? What it says that we're not locked into anything that's in that code. We are limited only by what we allow ourselves to imagine and to choose in this field that we find ourselves in. So I've run over a little bit longer than I typically would, but I felt it was important to flesh out some of these ideas. And again, this is just the beginning. There is so much to these codes. You wrote, you ask, and I'm answering. And I hope that what we've done today helps, number one, to bring a little clarity to what you may have heard about the Bible codes. Number two, I hope it brings you some peace, because there are people out there using a Bible code to frighten other people, to say, look, this is what it says is going to happen. I'm going to invite you, always go back with any prophecy. Here's an exercise for you. Always go back and think of those words. Will you change it? Will you change it? The intelligence of the Torah codes informed us that we always have a choice and that we're not locked into any of those dark outcomes. And that opens the door to the deep truth of the most beautiful possibilities that we can imagine. And with that, I'm going to close this section of this Q&A, a long answer to a short question that came from many people about the Bible codes and the Torah codes. Thank you for sharing part of your day with me today. I look forward, as always, to our next.
Iar colinda de Crăciun să răsune ca acum, să omorâm viața noastră, omule să fie așa. la mattina